The first night I stepped inside the mansion, I heard footsteps above me, but the upper floor had been sealed for years. You're listening to True Haunting Log, where real stories don't just stay in one place, they wait. If you've experienced something you can't explain, send your story to truehauntinglog@gmail.com. Story 1. The Spirits of the Bissell Mansion. I had always been fascinated by historic buildings, so when I got the opportunity to spend time inside the old Bissell Mansion, I didn't hesitate. The structure stood tall and weathered, its brick exterior darkened by age, its windows narrow and shadowed. Even during the day, the place felt heavy, like the air inside hadn't moved in decades. I entered through the front door, and the floorboards creaked softly under my weight. The interior smelled faintly of dust and old wood. The staircase leading upstairs was blocked off with a rope and sign warning visitors not to go beyond that point. I was told the upper floor wasn't safe and hadn't been used in years. I nodded, but the sense of curiosity stayed with me. That evening, I remained in one of the lower rooms, taking notes and photographs. The building was quiet, the silence almost unnatural. As night settled, the shadows deepened in the corners of the room. Around midnight, I heard it. A slow, deliberate footstep above me. I froze, my chest tightening. Another step followed, crossing the ceiling overhead. I looked toward the staircase. The rope still hung in place. No one had gone upstairs. The footsteps continued, pacing back and forth. And I realized something was walking on a floor that no one had used for years. The footsteps above me continued, slow and measured, like someone pacing deliberately across the sealed floor. I stayed frozen, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to follow the sound. The boards overhead creaked softly with each step. The silence between them felt heavy. I told myself it could be the building settling, but the rhythm felt too controlled. The pacing moved from one side of the room to the other. Then it stopped directly above me. My chest tightened as the silence stretched. After a few seconds, I heard a faint dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. The cold in the room intensified. I glanced toward the staircase again. The rope hadn't moved. The upper floor remained inaccessible. The dragging sound stopped. Then 3 slow footsteps crossed toward the staircase. My breathing became shallow. The sound reached the top of the stairs. The boards creaked there. I stared at the staircase opening. The silence stretched. Then I heard something else. A faint step, not above me, but on the staircase itself. The faint step on the staircase made my chest tighten immediately, because the rope blocking the stairs hadn't moved. I stared at it, waiting for any sign of motion. The wood creaked again, another step descending slowly from above. My breathing became shallow as I leaned forward slightly. The rope remained still. The silence stretched. Then the creak came again, one step lower. I could almost picture someone carefully walking down, but there was nothing visible. The cold air seemed to drift toward me from the staircase. Another step sounded. It stopped halfway down. I held my breath. The silence lasted several seconds. Then I heard something else. A faint whisper, too soft to understand, coming from the stairwell. My heart pounded harder. The whisper faded. The rope suddenly swayed slightly, as if brushed by someone passing. I didn't move. The step came again, now near the bottom. The air in the room felt heavier. I stared at the last visible stair. The silence stretched longer. Then I heard the final step reach the floor behind me, even though I hadn't seen anyone come down. The sound of that final step behind me made my chest tighten instantly because I was certain I had been watching the staircase the entire time. I didn't turn around right away. The silence in the room felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened. I slowly shifted my eyes toward the floor in front of me, listening carefully. There was no movement. My breathing became shallow. Then I heard a faint sound, fabric brushing lightly against wood. It was close, somewhere behind my shoulder. I turned slowly. The room looked empty. The doorway behind me stood open, but nothing was there. The cold lingered. I took a cautious step backward. The floorboard creaked under my foot. Then another creak answered it, not from me. My heart pounded harder. The second creak sounded near the wall to my right. I stayed frozen. The silence stretched. Then I noticed something shift in the corner of the room. A darker patch of shadow near the fireplace. I stared at it, unsure if my eyes were adjusting. The shape seemed to grow slightly taller. My breathing became uneven. The shadow leaned forward, separating faintly from the wall. And I realized whatever had come down the stairs was now standing inside the room. The shadow near the fireplace grew darker, separating slightly from the wall until it looked like a faint outline of a person. I stayed frozen, my breathing shallow, trying to understand what I was seeing. The room remained silent. The outline didn't move at first. Then I thought I saw it shift slightly, like someone leaning forward. My chest tightened. The cold in the room intensified. I blinked slowly. When I opened my eyes, the shape appeared closer to the center of the room. I hadn't seen it step. The silence stretched. The outline looked taller now, faintly resembling shoulders and a head. I didn't move. The floor creaked softly. The sound came from somewhere near the shadow. My heart pounded harder. The shape leaned slightly to one side. I stayed still. The cold air drifted toward me. Then I heard another sound from behind me. A faint footstep near the staircase again. My chest tightened as I realized the shadow in front of me hadn't moved. I slowly glanced toward the stairs. The rope swayed slightly. The silence stretched. Then I understood something that made the fear settle deeper. Whatever stood in front of me wasn't the only thing in the mansion. The rope at the staircase swayed gently, even though there was no draft in the room. I stared at it, my chest tightening, while the shadow near the center of the room remained still. The silence deepened. Then another faint creak came from the stairs. My breathing became shallow as I tried to listen carefully. The shadow in front of me didn't disappear. It remained, faint but clearly separate from the wall. The cold spread across the floor. Another step sounded on the staircase. The rope shifted again. I realized something else was descending from above. My heart pounded harder. The first shadow leaned slightly toward me. The second set of steps continued slowly downward. The room felt smaller. I didn't move. The final step reached the bottom of the stairs. The silence stretched. I glanced toward the stairwell. A faint, darker shape stood there, barely visible in the dim light. My chest tightened. I turned back toward the first shadow. It had moved closer. I hadn't seen it step. The cold intensified around me. I realized they were now positioned on both sides of the room. One near the fireplace. One near the staircase. And I was standing between them. I stayed frozen between the two shadows, my chest tightening as the cold air seemed to close in from both sides. The first silhouette near the fireplace leaned slightly forward, its outline more defined than before. The second shape near the staircase remained still, darker than the surrounding shadows. The room was silent. I didn't move. The floor creaked softly near the fireplace. My breathing became shallow. The first shadow appeared closer when I blinked. The second one near the stairs shifted faintly, like it had taken a step forward. The cold intensified. I felt the air grow heavier around me. The silence stretched. Then I heard something else from above. Another footstep on the sealed upper floor. My chest tightened as I realized a third presence was still upstairs. The shadows around me didn't move away. The first leaned closer. The second seemed to step toward me. I stayed frozen, unable to react. The silence deepened. Then suddenly, both shadows faded at the same time. The room looked empty again. My breathing slowed slightly. The cold began to lift. I glanced toward the staircase. The rope hung still. The silence stretched. Then I heard a slow footstep directly behind me, again. The slow footstep behind me sounded heavier than the others, close enough that I could almost feel the vibration through the floor. My chest tightened as I stood completely still, afraid to turn. The room remained silent except for the faint settling of the old wood. I slowly glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. The space behind me was empty, yet the cold lingered there. I took a cautious step toward the exit. The floor creaked under me. Another creak answered from behind. My breathing became shallow. I reached the doorway leading outside the room. The staircase remained blocked, the rope unmoved. The mansion felt silent again. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt slightly warmer. I turned back for one last look. The room appeared empty. Then, faintly, I saw movement upstairs through the stairwell opening. A shadow crossing the sealed floor again. My chest tightened. I left the building shortly after that. Even now, when I think about that night, I remember the pacing above, the steps descending, and the figures forming in the shadows. The mansion never felt empty. It felt occupied by something that never truly left. Some buildings don't just hold history, they hold the people who never walked out. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to True Haunting Log so you don't miss the next experience. And if you've ever stepped into a place that felt alive in the dark, send your story to truehauntinglog@gmail.com. Your experience might be the next one we share, because sometimes the oldest houses are never truly empty.